Okay, now we should be all right. Here, various feedbacks here. We should like yeah, can you try mute?
Let me just check this one.
Anyone's computer is playing on your
And we
mouth.
go to
This
share
mic will
screen
pick it
again.
up.
Oh, there it is. That's what we want.
Yes. Everyone looking, like how their computers
So it might work now. I'm just waiting for the people online to say it's working.
I'm sorry that it's not coming. It's not doing what it should do.
To share full screen.
There it is. There we are. Okay, so as I was saying, this is collaborative work. My partner is Jing Chen of the University of Northern British Columbia, who is the mathematician and physicist. Oh, and I am the English major essentially involved. So I was not an English major. I'm the collaborator and the expositor in this work. It is an effort to state in very simple terms an idea about the sources of economic value. It's not an original idea, and it's embedded in the history of economic thought in a fairly serious way. It is a theory of value, which is characteristically a foundational idea in economics, and foundations are not things that one examines very often, although one sometimes discovers that they are flawed, and when they are flawed, major redevelopment is typically required. In our view, the redevelopment has three features that are necessary. First of all, is to escape from the idea of economic equilibrium, and to escape completely from the notion, which goes back to classical Chinese philosophy, to Francois Quesnay, Adam Smith, and onwards into the modern utility-based theories that the world of economics is a world of balance and stability and tendency toward an unchanged, toward a steady state. This is not the way science has developed since at least the middle of the 19th century. And economics needs to be brought into line with that development. The second thing is really going back to ideas which are certainly not new with us, but perhaps can be traced to Léon Walras, that the foundation of value is scarcity, rather than utility and rather than labor. Walras took the view, and I said this, that labor was too narrow a source of value, and that utility was too broad. Which we agree with that. We think that the foundations moved from Walras to Jevons and then on to Marshall and Arrow-Debreu in putting utility in line with value. That was a misdirection. And third, the idea is, our idea is that the third thing that needs to be incorporated into the theory of value is the question of power, and particularly market power, monopoly power, and that these things can be done in a very simple way, using very simple mathematical expressions, which I will get to, and the simplicity of them is, I think, something which gives the theory a certain grace, but it also makes it practically applicable in a number of different cases. And then, so I guess this is what I've just been saying, that theories of value, labor theory of value, really developed strongly with Ricardo and peaks, if you like, with Marx. And then for the broad spectrum of economists, it suffered a reversal in 1870, roughly, with the marginal revolution, and it became a theory which, although Straffa solved certain problems, it became a theory which has a relatively narrow base in economics. I've already mentioned about Walras and scarcity and utility. We're not the first to suggest that entropy was a useful basis for value. This is Rogan's 1971 book. And even before that, of course, the concept of entropy was developed by Boltzmann in the late 19th century. So this is not certainly the underlying idea is hardly original with us. We're simply giving an exposition of it in a particularly, I think, simple way. What's the reason for thinking that this is an appropriate concept for a theory of value? Well, the first is that entropy is a notion of scarcity, a measure of scarcity in physics. So it is a scarcity theory. What's the basis of it? Resources are low entropy things, and they are the foundation of the life process. They are essential to life. Since resources are used up in a way which increases the entropy of the system, this is naturally an evolutionary process. Entropy is often thought of as being peak death, the steady state, and the final end of everything. But the fact is, we all tap in on a minute-to-minute basis, certainly a day-to-day basis, into sources of low entropy. That is the foundation of the life process for everything. Right? We transform those into higher, and we make use of them along the way. So we think of this as being a theory which is compatible with physics, with biology. And economics is simply an extension of those subjects to the human and to the human sphere. Well, it takes effort to maintain a low entropy state. Those who have access so an entropy theory in some sense encompasses the labor theory, although it would also allow for other sources of energy, of resources, oil, uranium, to be considered valuable, even if no labor has yet gone in to their extraction. And they are valuable, even though, as resources, even though they have not yet been pulled out of the crust of the earth. So that's, and the second thing is the entropy theory underpins the utility theory as well, because it is in our nature to be attracted to fresh foods, young people, new products, more efficient things. That's all encompassed by the idea of low entropy. And so utility is closely associated with it, although there may be, because non est disputandum, there may be differences of taste in particular cases. But in general, these are all ideas which are compatible with the notion of entropy. And finally, if you have access to a resource, to a low entropy good, you will make a practice of defending that resource. This is why you are seeking, if those of you who are students are seeking degrees at a university that provides you with a low entropy degree. It's one which is scarce and gives value. Okay, and you are not going to let someone else have access to that credential unless they qualify for it. They have to put effort. You can apply this essentially in it's a very general notion. So it's the idea is that monopoly power is part and parcel of the sources of economic value. So the mathematics, without any mathematics, very simple. There are two elements. One is the physical scarcity of the service, which can be expressed as its probability. What is it? What is the chance that you have it? What is the scale of the market at which it's operating? The second is how many entities are providing the service. And this was, I think, Jing's insight, was that if you are writing this down in logarithmic form, you can use the base of the logarithm function to specify the number of providers. And this will give you a very nice sense of the valuation. So you can bring market power into the theory in an extremely simple way. And by the way, this is a very strong parallel with information. As information theory uses the base 2, 0, 1 bytes. Information is transmitted in 0, and that's why 2 is is the logarithm-based information theory. But here we'll use a number that can change according to the number of providers. The properties of the logarithm are well known, that when they fit with, if you have two products, they're more valuable than one. If they're completely independent, their value should equal the sum of the two. And a good is a good because its value is not negative. The functional form, this is the mathematics of the theory, fits all of those requirements. If you have one probability space, the value is simply minus log base b, the probability. And if you have a series of probabilities, then you take the average, which gives you a functional form that is the same as entropy, the same as. And that is the mathematical basis of my theory. I can stop right here. That is as simple as I think one can possibly be, and a good deal simpler than the typical article in the American Economic Review. So this is a low entropy representation of value theory compared to that. All right, what does it mean? If you map this out in very simple terms, as the scarcity declines, the probability increases, the value declines. Very straightforward, just straight out of the function. So that's the first thing. Second thing is, as the number of producers increases, the base of the logarithm changes. If you had a pure monopoly, which is essentially doesn't exist in real life, because there's always some substitute for something. There's always some other way of doing things, however inaccessible, unless strictly enforced. The British salt monopoly in India, for example, which Gandhi broke by going down to the beach. You're looking at somewhat more than one. That's but in the event it declines pretty rapidly actually once you start having competition, which is consistent with our notions of how value plays out in the market process. Okay, that's a little bit hard to see, but the first the solid line is the same as the previous graph, and then what we did was simply map out the total value over as the probability. So this is unit value and total value, and it's obvious that as scarcity declines, total value increases, but it reaches a maximum at a certain point, and as things become completely non-scarce, they lose. Right? So you would be willing to pay for, let's say, a supply of compressed air or oxygen if you happen to be diving, but once you get up to the surface, you're no longer willing to pay for it. That's really saying with that. Yeah, this is just using the functional force, which again is as simple as I think we could possibly make. Okay, let me just say a few words about the character of this theory. We maintain that it's actually an objective theory, that it is unlike utility. It's not based strictly on psychology. It's based on the properties of things in the real world. And that's true, even though much of what you would like to know about real world conditions, you don't know with perfect precision. So if you're thinking about, again, petroleum is a nice example. We don't know how much of it is in the ground. We don't know how much it will cost to recover it. We don't know what the alternatives will be like in 5 or 10 years. It's what you're here on the Just Transitions Sustainability Working Group working out, among other things, right? But we do know that those things are objective facts, even though they're not known. They are things we're working to uncover and to find out more about. And this is, in a sense, it is not a question of tastes being completely subject to the whim or the individuals. There is an underlying real basis. And so there may be other things in any given market transaction based upon information which is held in different subjective judgments upon the objective reality. But our idea of the theory is that it is an objective theory in the same sense that information theory is objective. It is not about how big the file would be that you're transmitting at any given time, but what's the minimum? What's the minimum size? That's what Shannon's theory will tell you. about the information content. And that's what we're trying to say. It's the same that economic value is essentially a lower bound phenomenon that we can just discuss in very similar terms. So, and what can you do with this? And here's an example in real life. This is something that Jing observed. He is in Canada, and we're applying the theory in this case to the valuation of corporate stocks. Very practical question. And the question is, how does value change when the market conditions change? Well, a nice example in an area where there are not a lot of transportation alternatives. If you ever tried to ride the Canadian trains, you can see it's a long process. Airfare is the major, airlines are the major transportation route such as in Canada. Well, there were three companies.
GPS signal lost.
They were Air Canada, WestJet, and Jetsco. And on March 10th, 2005, one of them, Jetsco, declared bankruptcy. Right? So there were three major operators. Okay. Now, it's a good question. Should there be four or three? Anyway, there are three here. So that's a question I'm going to raise with him, but never mind. As you go from 4 down to 3, you have an increase in the value of the operators. We do that overnight with the stock market change. The calculation of the theory is that there should be an increase on the order of 0.26 in the value of the survivors, and the actual increase was on the order of 0.27. It's not bad. It's not bad. So that's just one application that one can take here. Another one, and there are a number of them in the paper that we sort of spell out, is fixed cost and regulation. And this insight that actually came to me via my other life as a professor of policy through a colleague the first many years of my time at the LBJ School, Labor Secretary Ray Marshall in the Carter administration, that told me about how they applied regulatory standards to the textile industry in order to clear out the cotton dust from the factories to reduce the incidence of bisonosis of brown fungus. Now, the regulation had the effect of forcing marginal producers to the wall, who weren't willing to buy, in this case, Swiss and German equipment that operated much more efficiently and also was capable of cleaning the air in the factories. You were done. If you were willing to do it and able to do it, financially strong enough, you survived. The number of producers declined, and the profitability of the industry was sustained. Right? Where it previously had been very competitive and also very debilitating for those who wouldn't do that. And that's a very general regulation. Regulation is often thought of as simply being a burden on the market, something that you only do that when the benefits exceed the costs. But when you look at it from this point of view, you see it matters differently for different firms. For a stronger firms seek regulation because that keeps out the weaker firms and keeps their rate of return high. You see that any regulator, I think, will tell you that. Market segmentation is another example. If you can divide your market, then you have in each piece of it a smaller number of producers and a higher rate of return. There's a complicated section of the paper which I won't try to reproduce in the time we have that deals with free trade. But if you take two countries, one of which is resource rich and the other one is resource poor, and compare before and after the reduction of trade barriers and integration of the markets, the theory will give you fairly precise indicators of who wins and who loses, and why consumers in one region will prefer free trade and the others in the other region will generally reject. Consumers of petroleum in Venezuela are not going to favor free trade. They don't want to pay the low price. Consumers in the United States or importer of petroleum would generally favor free trade because the world price is lower. And of course, anybody in Europe, I think, is probably at the moment acutely aware of the implications of that. A nice example is the effect of tariffs. And here again is a Canadian case from Canada. Normally, we would think of the tariff as being um, a burden on the consumer. Right? And so you have to wonder, why is it that in the United States, Republican administrations, which are free market administrations, theoretically, headed by people named things like Bush, Trump, why do they slap tariffs on Canadian lumber when we know that housing is a major source of the sense of growth and prosperity in the American economy, and therefore a major source of support? And the answer to it is that these people, so they may be Republicans, and I was almost contemporary of George W. Bush's in places like Andover, Harvard, and Yale, and I didn't have the highest respect for academic abilities, but the fact is that administration understood what the consequences from doing this were. The consequences were that it reduced the profits of the Canadian lumber producers at their then level of production, right? And in order to save themselves, the Canadian producers raised the level of production. And as they raised the level of production, their rate of return went positive, but much lower than it had been before. And the sales to the United States increased, and the materials became available to American home builders at a lower price. And this is very good if you happen to be a president running for president. So this is not in the line, so far as I understand it, with the textbook notion of what a tariff does. It is in line with what happens in the real world when you're dealing with an industry with a high level of fixed cost, which is, of course, the case of the forest, the lumber industry. And this was the incident here that we're looking at is let's see, 2000 and 2002. So this is the George W. Bush administration. And the table gives you what happened to production and profitability before and after the tariffs were introduced. And you can see that the production goes up 68 to 71, whatever the metric is here. And the revenue goes down for Canfor, and their profit drops from 125 to 11.5. Positive, so they're still in business, but they are taking a big hit. And who is benefiting the American consumer? The prices dropped from 346 to 260. Very much consistent with prediction of this particular theory. So let me just, I'll leave, we'll just have an hour, so I'll leave this time for half what discussion you want to have. We conclude the paper with some invidious comparisons to the dominant theory, which is obviously Arrow-Debreu is the preeminent representation of it, and noting that we're not the first to have raised some doubts about this theory. Roy Weintraub says that the theory of value is a very well-arranged cemetery with a beautiful array of tombstones. And Schubix wrote in the review of Debreu's theory of value that it represents a tidying up of old work and problems, which will not necessarily provide a stepping stone for new work. The development of economics will rest heavily upon the utilization and exploration of assumptions radically different from those employed in this work. And well, we take that to heart, and we think that what we're doing here is in fact sufficiently radically different, but that it also has a common sense and applicable basis that Arrow-Debreu simply does not. And one does have to ask, why is it that the theory of value has been so stale and stagnant for the last, since 1954, 69 years? And I think the answer to that is that it has been very vigorously defended as has an entrenched special interest. It's not that people are particularly interested in what it does, not that they particularly work with the Arrow-Debreu formulations. I don't know how much you work with them. I can assure you that I do not. My colleagues do not. They simply sit in background and are defended the way, well, we're here at a university with a certain tradition of defending some given ideas. So the parallels here will not perhaps be entirely surprising. That this is essentially like the defense of a religious view. And there's a quotation which Jing put in, but I won't resist the temptation to read it, since from someone who has both my initials and my last name, in fact, my father, in the Affluent Society, which, by the way, is partly dedicated to me. And he wrote that the very vigor of minor debate makes it possible to exclude as irrelevant, and without seeming to be unscientific or parochial, any challenge to the framework itself. Moreover, with time and aided by the debate, the accepted ideas become increasingly elaborate. They have a large literature, even a mystique. The defenders are able to say that the challengers of the conventional wisdom have not mastered their intricacies. Indeed, these ideas can be appreciated only by a stable, orthodox, and patient man, in brief, by someone who closely resembles the man of conventional wisdom. The conventional wisdom having been made more or less identical with sound scholarship, this position is virtually impregnable. The skeptic is disqualified by his very tendency to go brashly from the old to the new. So we're certainly waiting for that to happen to us, and I thank you for your time and attention.
Thank you very much, Professor. We can open the floor to questions. If someone online wants to speak, can you raise your hands? Otherwise, maybe because the TV is.
Oh yeah, the TV has a mic.
Does someone have a question?
I do. So thank you very much for the talk. So I'll start with one question. We'll see if we have time for a second one. The first one is, so this is a sort of one-dimensional theory. But the first thing that comes to mind is this seems to be very dependent on the size and shares within the market, and so on the market definition, and how you sort of narrow, widen the markets. How do you respond to that?
Sorry, say that again.
Right. I was saying that this theory seems to be quite dependent on how you define your market, as well as, so I'm not sure if there's a notion of market share in there, but it does seem like it relies a lot on.
Well, yeah, I mean, markets do have boundaries. They may change over time. And so a given, let's say, now let's just take the air in this room. If we're completely sealed and we stay here for long enough, it would become scarce and we would be willing to bid for it. Once you open the door, the market is expanded and the scarcity goes away. Right? Well, you can think about it in different terms. If the market's expanded, you have something which is if there's no air out there, it may become more valuable. But if there's air out there, it becomes less valuable. So you think about that. Yes, you have to define in some sense what the probability space is. Sure. Otherwise, you have
right. So here we're only dealing with a single good, right, which is here. But when we start dealing with multiple goods, assuming that we have different elasticities of substitution between them, the definition of market becomes more arbitrary, right?
I don't think it's arbitrary, but it does. In order to see, and again, the theory is a lower bound theory, and so in order to see whether it works in a particular case, it certainly helps, as with the Canadian regional airline example, to have a market that's reasonably well defined. If you were thinking that, okay, there are bus lines and there are train lines, and the Chinese come in and put in high-speed rail that gets you across Canada in a few hours, then of course the parameters that doesn't change the underlying foundation of the idea.
Right, that makes sense. And so does the notion of market share fit into this theory? Because we've talked about the number of factors, but that doesn't, how do you link? So I see the link between.
Yeah, we have not developed the notion of entities with different shares of the market. So you can see that that is what, as they say, for further research. So at the moment, one bite-sized piece here is being offered. Number of, and of course, with the airfare example, these entities were not at the same size and did not have the same market share. So that's that's going to be a complication that has to deal with at some point. But if I try to present, if we did it all at once and try to present it all at once, I would quickly get lost. another, let's say, economic feature.
Okay. My first question, there are a lot of things, but I try like to go sequentially. So we see how important number of providers is in the theory of value here. But like we know also that like if the value of one product is very high, chances are that more actors are going to be interested into going into that market. And so of course we are here.
That's the second law of thermodynamics for you. And as they do, the value will fall.
Yeah, that's how, so in that context, if you were extending that theory in order to endogenize that quantity, how would you see it? And do you expect to have, like, as a process going somehow to an equilibrium? Because at the moment, the value and so the price is kind of a state variable, a direct consequence of the number of providers.
Correct.
However, if the price is very high, the number of providers is going to increase. And so you would expect that the value of everything is going toward like one natural limits. And
well, I mean, again, with the total value will, as the technology matures, the total value will ultimately peak and decline. These computers become as plentiful as air and water, you won't be willing to pay for them. But in fact, you observe that happening, and this is very consistent with, for example, Schumpeter's vision of evolutionary. It's exactly what he says it is. Initially, a monopoly comes into existence with any new technology because somebody's first. But it was, in his view, always transitory, and therefore something where you captured the gains for a short period of time. And you, of course, as I said at the beginning, that's a low entropy resource. You defend it. You defend it with patents, with copyrights, you defend it with armies, you defend it with the Department of State. That is what those entities are there to do, to prevent other people from getting your so-called intellectual property. That's, this is the nature of world politics, among other things. So there's nothing inconsistent there.
But it's, well, in my naive perception of the world, it seems to me that we are getting to a more condensates, and so less providers and more oligopoly in terms of important market, like we can think about oil, gas,
well,
or even
I mean, there's certainly, when something new happens and new technology comes, there will indeed be a newly dominant entity. And we can see over the course of a few decades that changes. The United States is a nice place to study this because corporations are listed publicly, and the value market capitalization of their shares is something which their CEOs like to advertise as part of their wealth and power, which is not necessarily the case in Europe. So we can see that what we in the U.S. naively believe to be the richest person in the world, which is certainly not the case. Middle East, Russia, and even in Europe, there you will find people who are, but they're more discreet about it. Some people, well, not the Russians. In the US, it's what's the market cap on your stock? And those people are well known. It was once, I don't know if anybody remember Bill Gates? Contemporary mine at Harvard, he was once the richest person in the world. He's now considered to be, medium-sized, not shoulder high to Jeff Bezos. While Jeff Bezos has also reached his peak Bezos, I believe. So we have these things turn over in finite time.
Okay, so it's just a question about the theory of consumption. So you managed to build the theory of value without relying on the utility,
Right.
which is really interesting. But then the question is that we would like to add a theory of consumption, and it would be weird to have a theory of consumption which relies on utility. But then how could we build something like a theory of consumption which would be consistent with the theory of value, which is not utility related?
Yeah, I'll make two observations about that. One is that again, our notion is that economic value should be something considered to be an objective based upon the criteria that we spelled out. So it may well be that someone that you as a consumer buy something for more than it's worth. That's a very common sense, very common experience, right? You realize that you paid more than the value, right? So this gives imparts some meaning to that notion. If you take the utility theory, the implication of it is there's really no distinction between value and price, and there's no reason to have a theory of value at all. If you read, I think I remember Milton Friedman's, is it a theory of prices, I think, is what the name of his book is. It's not drawing any distinctions. So every price that you pay is a rational person making themselves as happy as they can be under the circumstances. Well, that's a completely tautological theory. It has no underlying basis. It says that we really don't need to think about value anymore. The market has already decided because you paid for it. That's it, guys. That's it.
GPS signal lost.
I had trouble finding this place.
We got lost the first time too.
Yeah. So anyway, so that was the first observation, and Google has distracted me from what the second one was. Oh yes, something I said earlier, which is that if you think about us as biological entities whose psychologies are an extension of our biological nature, the fact is, the younger you are, the more attractive you are. Again, as I said earlier, the fresher the vegetables, the more you're likely to buy. And a new and more efficient product is more appealing. Every aspect of our psychology does in fact gravitate toward the appeal of low entropy. Right? And you certainly will pay more for a resource which is relatively pure. You'll pay more for 21 karat gold for 18. This is embedded in our nature. Yeah.
On that very point, I come from physics, and so and I shifted working on property of biological system, like with my physicist tool, and at first I was like, entropy is like the best notion ever, and then I realized that entropy can be really practical to think about biology, but like in terms of quantity or to go a bit further, like weakly nonlinear theories such as statistical physics fail to tackle the complexity of biology. And when we go into economy, it's even harder. And so I always feel that using entropy is maybe, I'm not sure it always contains exactly what we want for it to contain. For example, if we think in terms of embedded energy or organization, uranium has a fantastically low entropy. However, I cannot personally metabolize uranium. I need some very specific units of capital in order to do it. So it's not the notion of low entropy is not. So what we call in the context of our discussion, low entropy is not physically low entropy, but like our ability to metabolize effectively the notion. And hence, I feel like one of the notion which might works well is to talk about dissipative structure, because a dissipative structure can only dissipate certain over dissipative structure. And I was wondering if what motivated you to go toward radically or directly into a definition of entropy and not going more into like a biological approach of dissipative structure or the ability of one organism to metabolize of organism, and so a relative value.
I know exactly where you're going to, and the reason that I presented this paper here is that otherwise in 1 hour I would not have had time to present 2 papers.
Yeah, you need a book for that.
The book that is in preparation is in fact biophysical theories of value and production. Right, and it's exactly the point you're making is taken up, in detail. Every entity that chooses to use a resource must first make an investment. That's true at every scale. A cell must have walls. An organism must have. And investments are made, by the way, according to plans. They are not organized according to by markets. Your biological investment is organized by your DNA. Your physical investments are organized by blueprints, technologists, and engineers. Your reactor with your uranium is organized in such a way. And with all such organization, there is necessarily regulation. That you do not have a reactor without a cooling system, without monitoring, and so forth. You do not drive a car without oil. The whole point of the exercise is to maintain the flow through the system within the capacity of the system to function without. And we use the same metaphors. When we deregulate the banking system, what does it do? It melts down. Right? I mean, it's just our understanding of the phenomena are drawn precisely. But then an economist comes along and says the market is more efficient if it's deregulated. Well, yes, we're all more efficient if we're deregulated, except that we don't survive. Which is that's a drawback of excessive efficiency.
Very short amount of time.
Precisely. So that's all. And so then you sort of ask the question: okay, what motivates the production decision? Well, you have a certain expectation of being able to make a positive rate of return. You have to do it over a certain duration. There's a certain level of uncertainty which is going to play into this, and we put all of that together in a second paper in a distinct chapter of what I hope will be forthcoming. Yes, and what does the equation that it's not as simple as this, but what does it look like? It looks like basically, it's essentially an options pricing model that taken in reverse. And conceptually, it's just okay. Thinking about this the way a business would think about decision. And of course, then you start realizing that in the present environment, with resource costs going up, uncertainty going up, it becomes increasingly difficult to persuade a profit-seeking entity to make a long-term investment, which is a dramatic question for the concern that you have with transitions and sustainability. Precisely what you want people to do is to make these long-term investments. You have to persuade them that it's in their interest. Right? Well, that it can calculate their interests, and it's not obvious to in many cases that fact, that they're going to come to the same conclusion that you would, and in part because their time horizon is not the same as yours, and they're looking at the interest that they're responding to is not the same as yours. So these questions then get you into dramatic questions of what it means to be sustainable, what it means for a resource to be renewable, and we talk about all of that down the road. Thank you for asking, because you gave me a chance to get a little briefly without having to ask.
We have time for at least 2 more questions.
I'll move on to the second part of my question. Something else I wanted to ask is, so here I think this makes intuitive sense in the case where demand is sufficiently inelastic. Do you intend to sort of generalize this work from scarcity to relative scarcity as sort of controlled by some kind of aggregate demand or local demand? Essentially the notion of relative scarcity as opposed to just mere scarcity.
I'm not entirely sure what the distinction is. For a given good, it's always scarcity is always relative to something. But
so I was meaning relative to the demand for it, meaning if I look at this nice tent-like thing with red, and I make every single color different, and I put it on the market, and nobody wants it.
Okay, well, I don't know that this is responsive, but I'll talk a little bit about a hostile referee report. Or the referee said that his kindergarten drawings were more scarce than those of Pablo Picasso, but obviously had no market value, and therefore, his point was that we were neglecting the element of utility. To which I responded, I won't implicate Jing in this, and I responded that, contrary to the intuition here, kindergarten drawings are made with relatively inexpensive paper, crayons, and the artistic talent of the typical 5-year-old. And that is, none of those are scarce. Millions of them are produced every year, and their market value is in line with their scarcity. And I said, but however, for a mother, the drawings of her own child are indeed highly valuable because it's a monopoly product. But you can ask any parent, but especially any mother, the number of producers, the number of children she has, the value will go down. So in that sense, entirely the referee, his response to that, or I presume it's a he.
Just a very small suggestion, exactly on that, Carl. Maybe like for the moment, it's the number of providers which is explicitly shown. Shouldn't it be the number of providers divided by the number of potential buyers? And
the probability that was defined in some space, that's the market.
Right.
So yeah, so it's what is your market penetration overall? How many products of these have been sold? That's where that comes in.
Does this theory integrate the response of the demand side to price?
I'm sorry?
Does this theory integrate the response to price of potential buyers?
Well, the response to price?
Right.
No, well, it's underpinning the determination of price. No, it does not. We're not claiming that every price will be given by the value. It's essentially that it will not be sold for less than the value most of the time, unless there's something strange going on. But generally speaking, an ongoing concern will not sell something for less than the value. Whether a consumer can be induced to pay more, well, that's between them and the buyer, them and the seller. Although in most cases, certainly in an organized economy, most prices are fixed for currently produced goods. But on the other hand, even in modern economy, you go to a used car lot, and notoriously pay what you can be induced to pay.
last question, this one empirical. So here you've sort of validated this theory on Canadian airline markets. Did you try to validate it or confront it to other markets with potentially more elastic demand, or look at the case of a merger of a newcomer to a market, something like that, and try to see if the changes fit in other markets?
Well, you certainly, I mean, again, there is an example in the paper of a move of two countries toward a free trade agreement. And that will give you a sense of how those dynamics will work out here. That's clearly spit out of the paper. But if I tried to put the equations on the PowerPoint at the time, better to look at it and persuade yourself that the arithmetic was not correct. But the thing about it is all of this is simple as it can possibly be. There's nothing, no complex algebra here. There's nothing obscure. There's no infinite time multi-generation optimization. There's no calculus. None of that. It's simple. It's as simple as Ricardo's principles, but more sensitive.
Yeah, we have to, because I think the room is reserved for the next hour, so end it. But thank you very much.
Listen, thank you very much. I appreciate your coming. It's the first time. I appreciate those who also showed up. And the first time I had a chance to talk about this, and since it's the real thinker is not here, it's a test for me to whether I can articulate it in a way.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
That's great. Thank you so much.